Welcome to the shop. I'm Clay Baker, and this is Motonexus. Today we've got a new project that is going to address a problem that has been plaguing this bike, mainly because of me riding it. So I am 6'2", about 230 pounds, and that is the maximum weight capacity or thereabouts of this 1986 Honda CT110. I have seen people carry a deer out of the woods on these, firewood, do all kinds of stuff. But the reality is that the suspension bottoms out. While it may survive, it's not a great ride, and the handling isn't fantastic if you're a bigger guy. So what we're going to do today is upgrade the front suspension. The rear suspension has already been improved. I bought a set of shocks from dratv.com that added some additional stiffness to the rear end. And today, after I finish my coffee, we're going to install a brand new set of front forks that are going to provide some additional stiffness and support on the front end, so we get rid of that bottoming. And please feel free to ask any questions. This is the first time for me doing this, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Basically, we just need to release the fork strut from the top yoke, and there's a pinch bolt in the back. The front wheel and the fender will obviously have to come off in order to release it. Let's go ahead and get started on our suspension upgrade today on Motonexus. To stabilize the bike backwards and lift the front end up, I just put some tie downs on the rear end. The bike is up on its center stand, so I'm just trying to compress the rear shocks to bring the front end up, and that's going to make it easier to take the front wheel off and then be able to take the forks off one at a time and not have to worry about the bike coming back down. When you take the top bolts out of the forks, you don't want to compress those forks because you're probably going to push some oil out. So this just makes the whole thing a lot more stable and easier to do. There's any number of ways that you could achieve this. If you don't have a lift, you could just support the bike underneath its engine guard and lift the bike up there. So the first thing I want to do is get in here and remove the front wheel, and then we'll take off the fender. So, you know, we've got a castle nut on the left side. So I'm going to take the brake arm off to release the brake cable, and we're just going to remove this 10mm bolt. Special nut on the end, don't lose that. And then just some gentle wiggling. There we go. So having the pinch bolt out, I don't even have to take this arm all the way off, because now it'll rotate in the center groove and give me the freedom I need to pull the brake cable out and let that come down to where I can remove the cable. But first, let's take off the speedo cable. Remember to use a JIS screwdriver on everything. If it looks like a Phillips, it's not. Okay, so the next step is we're going to pull the axle bolt out, and I'm going to do that with, it's a 17mm on the castle nut, and then a 14mm on the opposite side for the axle itself. So with a soft hammer, not a metal one, we're just going to gently tap out the axle bolt. There is a little washer that's recessed right here, so you don't want to lose that. There it goes. There's the washer. Keep your parts organized. And we'll take the bolt out. And then just put everything back together so you don't lose anything. And now the front wheel can come out. Remember, there's a tab in the brake drum attached to this fork. So you do have to lift it up in order to get the wheel to come out. All right, and then with a 10mm socket, we'll just go in, take out the 4 bolts that are holding the front fender in place. There are some little rubber pads or washers behind, in between the fork and the fender, which are there to reduce noise and keep the paint protected. Don't lose them like I just did. These specialty items for Hondas can be tricky sometimes to find. So, see, it's a little hat washer with a rubber washer that goes over it. We don't want to lose those. There's 4 of them. Now that we have that apart, we can loosen the pinch bolts, take out the top bolts, and remove the forks. Headlight and everything else can stay in place. All right, so with the pinch bolts loose, and when I say it's a pinch bolt, here's what it's pinching, that gap, in order to hold on to the fork at this lower point. Shouldn't need to take that all the way out, so I'm just gonna leave it part way out. If necessary, we can put a screwdriver up into the gap, and I would go from underneath so you don't mess up the paint where it's visible. And we can give it a little bit of a twist, maybe even tap it in if it jams up in here on us at all, if it's sticky. So now the thing to do is to remove that top bolt, and we'll take the first fork out. The chrome top bolts are 19mm, so get you a 19mm wrench. Probably easier to use a wrench than a socket in this tight space where your handlebars are. And we'll just get it loose. Now, I have seen some people loosen this bolt just like I have, and if the fork is too tight in there, they'll take a hammer and tap on the top of this. I can tap on that with my finger and it goes down. So I don't think we're going to need to put a hammer on this. In fact, I think I'm going to need to hold on to the fork. All right, let's see if it wants to release for us. There it goes. Not being too fussy. Just a little bit of twisting. And there's the left fork. So we are going to reuse some parts off of the old forks. And the first thing we want to do is just remove this boot with the spring seat that's underneath it. And so you just push it off. You can remove that. Now this part, just go away. Now remember, I am working on the left side where there's a tab for the brake drum. The other side doesn't have that tab. So new fork, make sure you're working with the right one. So the parts that we're going to reuse out of this component are the spring seat, the spring from the old set, and we're going to want to get rid of this boot, and we're going to replace the boot. So just peel the boot off the top of the chrome ring. This would have been the top of the fork. So we got the chrome ring. There's a plastic spring guide inside of the spring. And if we just push the fork boot off, there we go. So we don't need this. We have a brand new one with the forks. Here's the external spring from the old fork with its seat and the guide inside. So I think what we'll do is clean this up, and then we'll start the assembly. With the new fork comes a brand new boot or gator and a new chrome ring for the top. Notice there's a little notch, that's for the triple tree on this side. And also I got the brand new chrome cap nut for the top tree. So what we're going to do is put these components together. So we're going to reuse the old external spring. There is a spring inside of here along with the oil that's new and stiffer. That's how the fork comes. So we'll just slide that on. And then the new fork boot, the long end with the holes in it goes down. Make sure you got that plastic guide in there to control the spring. And we want to get that boot down and over this lip. There it goes. It's always easier in somebody else's video. So now let's go ahead, we'll take this top bolt out, and we'll slide the whole fork up into place. And then I think with the fork installed, it'll be easier to finish pulling this boot up over the chrome ring. The chrome shaft on the fork slides up into a pretty tight space inside the fork ears here. And I'm going to put just a little dab of grease inside of there to make it easier to slide. We don't want to scratch the chrome or anything. And it feels really dry, so I wiped it out the dirt. Let's just make it a little easier for it to slide in. There it goes. That's better. Now we've got our brand new chrome bolt. There it is. We just need to pull the gator up. I find that if I pull up one edge and then twist the whole thing a little bit, it goes into place easier. And there it is. Just need to tighten the top bolt and give it the proper torque. All right, so the left front fork is in place, and that went in very easily. I do recommend you clean out the lower triple tree and give that metal just a little wipe of some grease. All right, so the left front fork is installed and the gator is all in place. Top bolt is tightened down and torqued, and I'm just going to repeat the process on the other side. It's identical. There's nothing different other than the right side doesn't have this tab for the front brake. And then we'll get the whole thing assembled and hopefully take it out for a test ride here very soon. All right, so I did a little wipe down on the front fender. Might as well clean this stuff while it's apart. And let's go ahead and put the front fender back together. The fussy part is going to be these washers. All right, so my approach is to just get a few threads caught on each side and then slip in another washer and do the same. Remember, the cap of the fender metal washer goes into the fender, not into the fork. That holds it in place. These bolts should go in easy. If they're not, you're cross-threading. And remember, with those 4 bolts, you're holding the forks in the position that they want to be in. So if you're cross-threading, you probably got the fork turned out the wrong way or something. So I'm just turning the socket with my fingers to get it finger tight and then snugging it down. Now we get our front wheel put on, hook up the brake, the speedometer, and this job will be done. So with the front wheel back on, there's just one thing I wanted to mention. So first of all, well, a couple of things. When you put the speedo in, the cable in, you know, there's a flat blade inside and a tong on the end of the cable that goes over that. Make sure it's fully seated and then put the screw in and tighten. If you're in fully and engaged with the mechanism, this won't pull out once the screw is in. The other thing is, remember, I released the brake arm in order to get the cable off easily. On the arm is a dot right down here. So right here on the brake arm is a dot, and that's an alignment dot. And on the end of the shaft is the matching dot right there. And your job is going to be to get those two dots aligned and then push it on to the knurled shaft. And once you've got it slipped on, then you can get the pinch bolt back in and tighten this down. You'll find that it doesn't want to go on very easily at all unless those two dots are aligned. But it also makes your brake indicator work correctly, which is that arrow there on the hub and the arrow on the brake, on the tab in the back. So when that rotates around, by the time that those arrows align, you probably need new brake pads. Just a little tip. So that's it. Our front end suspension upgrade is complete, and I'm ready to take this bike out for a test ride and see what I think of the new stiffer front end suspension along with the beefed up rear suspension. All the parts were bought from dratv.com. You'll find that information in the description down below. All right, well, let's take this bike out for a test ride now that we have the new suspension on the front end. I hope you enjoyed this, found this helpful. Please check us out at Motonexus.com. We are Motonexus on Facebook and YouTube. And our brand new site, which is taking over, is Motonexusgarage.com. Thank you again. I'm Clay Baker, and this was Motonexus.